The first rays of dawn crept across the command center of the global defense nexus, casting long shadows over holographic displays that hummed with quiet intensity. Captain Maria Rodriguez stood motionless, her reflection barely visible in the massive viewscreen that stretched across the entire western wall. Outside, the early morning light caught the edges of orbital defense platforms, intricate networks of technology that looked more like delicate spider webs than instruments of protection. She remembered the briefings. Every military strategist, every political leader had warned about this moment. First contact was never supposed to be like the optimistic science fiction of the past century. It wasn't going to be a moment of peaceful exchange or scientific wonder. It was going to be a test of survival. The Zarkon transmission came precisely at 4:37 Greenwich Mean Time. A holographic projection materialized in the center of the command center, its form a nightmare of biological and mechanical integration. Admiral Krell. If Admiral could even describe the writhing mass of tentacles, cybernetic implants, and pulsing neural networks, filled the space with an imposing presence. Inhabitants of Earth, the translation matrix rendered the aliens' communication in a voice that seemed to vibrate through the very molecules of air. Your civilization has been evaluated. Surrender is your only rational option. Maria's fingers danced across her personal interface, running diagnostics, analyzing the transmission's underlying frequencies. Something about the communication felt different. It wasn't just a demand. It was a performance, a carefully constructed piece of psychological manipulation designed to induce immediate capitulation. Around her, the command center buzzed with controlled activity. Technicians from every corner of the globe worked in perfect synchronization, their movements a testament to years of preparation. No single person knew the entire defensive strategy. It was a distributed network of intelligence, each team holding a piece of a massive, complex puzzle. Dr. Elena Chen, lead researcher of the Quantum Adaptive Response Team, approached Maria with a data crystal. Her eyes reflected a combination of excitement and calculated determination. The transmission carries multiple layers of subtext, she said, her voice calm despite the magnitude of the moment. It's not just a message. It's a probe designed to assess our cognitive and technological capabilities. The holographic display began to shift. What had started as a clear transmission of the alien admiral now began to fragment, pixels dancing with impossible complexity. Maria watched, her heart racing, as the communication started to respond to their analysis in real time. Interesting, Elena muttered, her fingers flying across a secondary interface. It's adapting. The message is learning from our initial response. Outside, the first of the orbital defense platforms began to pulse with a soft, almost imperceptible light. Millions of nanite clusters, dormant until this moment, started to awaken. They weren't weapons in any traditional sense. They were more like a living, thinking ecosystem of technological potential. Admiral Krell's projection continued its demand, unaware that each word was being dissected, analyzed, and transformed. The Zarkon believed they were delivering an ultimatum. In reality, they were providing humanity with its first real opportunity to demonstrate something fundamental about their species. This wasn't going to be a war of traditional conflict. This was going to be a conversation, a complex, multi-layered dialogue that would redefine the very concept of first contact. Maria caught Elena's eye and allowed herself the smallest of smiles. The Zarkon had no idea what was coming. The Atacama Desert stretched out like an infinite canvas of burned ochre and pale gold, its surface deceptively empty. Beneath the windswept landscape, 600 meters underground, the most advanced research facility in human history hummed with quiet intensity. Dr. Elena Chen adjusted her quantum resonance scanner, the device barely larger than a standard tablet, but capable of processing more information in a millisecond than entire computer networks could manage just a decade ago. Around her, a team of researchers from every continent worked in carefully orchestrated silence. Each team member wore a specialized neural interface that allowed for instantaneous communication and data sharing, their thoughts weaving together like an invisible, intelligent web. "Quantum stability at 99.997%, muttered Dr. Akira Nakamura, his fingers dancing across a holographic display that shifted and reconfigured with each touch. The display showed multiple layers of technological potential, not just current capabilities, but projected innovations that seemed to exist in the liminal space between science and imagination. The facility was more than a research center. It was humanity's insurance policy, a distributed network of intelligence that had been quietly preparing for decades. No single government controlled this operation. It was a global collaborative effort, born from the collective understanding that humanity's survival might one day depend on its ability to think beyond traditional boundaries. Alina's primary focus was the Adaptive Response Protocol, a technological ecosystem that could learn, transform, and respond to threats in ways that defied conventional military strategy. Each system was designed with multiple layers of complexity. What appeared to be a simple communication network could instantaneously reconfigure itself into a defensive matrix, absorbing and neutralizing potential threats. "The Zarkon transmission is fascinating," she said to the room, her voice cutting through the ambient technological hum. "It's not just a message. It's a complex cognitive probe designed to assess our technological and psychological capabilities." Dr. Marcus Rodriguez, no relation to Captain Maria Rodriguez, pulled up a series of decoded frequency patterns. "Look at the underlying communication structure," he explained, highlighting intricate mathematical sequences that seemed to dance across the holographic display. "It's not linear. It's more like a living, breathing communication organism." The team had been preparing for this moment their entire professional lives. Each researcher represented a different approach to technological innovation. There were quantum physicists working alongside cognitive psychologists, artificial intelligence experts collaborating with cultural anthropologists. Their collective goal was simple yet profound: to demonstrate that humanity was something entirely unique in the galactic landscape. Beneath their feet, massive quantum computing clusters processed information at speeds that would make traditional supercomputers seem like ancient abacuses. These were not just machines. They were the closest thing to a collective intelligence humanity had ever created. Adaptive, learning systems that could process multiple potential scenarios simultaneously. Simulation Run 7392, announced a young researcher named Zara Okonkwo. The holographic display erupted with a complex network of potential responses to the Zarkon transmission. Each simulation showed a different approach, a different potential conversation with the alien civilization. Alina watched the simulations with a mixture of scientific detachment and profound excitement. This wasn't just about defending Earth. This was about demonstrating a fundamentally different approach to existence, a way of thinking that valued adaptability, creativity, and collective potential. The facility continued its quiet work, a hidden heart of human potential beating beneath the desert's indifferent surface. Outside, the world remained unaware of the technological marvel that represented humanity's most sophisticated preparation for a moment many had thought would never come. Humanity wasn't just ready. It was eager to show the galaxy exactly what it was capable of achieving. The first Zarkon warships breached Earth's orbital perimeter like a swarm of obsidian nightmares. Each vessel defied traditional understanding of spacecraft design. Biological and mechanical components intertwined in ways that suggested living technology far beyond human comprehension. They moved with a synchronized precision that spoke of collective consciousness, a single massive intelligence controlling thousands of individual ships. Lieutenant Commander David Chen watched from the Global Defense Nexus, his hands hovering above an interface that looked more like a living ecosystem than a traditional control system. The quantum adaptive networks had been waiting for this moment, countless simulations and preparations compressed into milliseconds of potential response. "Incoming transmission," announced the communication specialist, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. The holographic display fragmented and reformed, revealing Admiral Krell's imposing form. Tentacles of biological circuitry writhed around a central neural core, the aliens' presence filling the command center with an oppressive psychic weight. Inhabitants of Earth, the translation matrix rendered the aliens' communication. Your civilization has reached its terminal point. Prepare for complete systemic integration. What the Zarkon didn't understand was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. Every major research institution, every technological innovation, every collaborative effort had been a piece of a massive, distributed defense network. The first wave of Zarkon energy weapons erupted toward Earth's orbital defenses, massive beams of destructive potential that could reduce entire continents to slag in moments. But instead of a traditional defensive response, something entirely unexpected happened. Millions of nanite clusters awakened. These were not simple robotic defenders. They were a living, thinking technological ecosystem that defied every known principle of warfare. Where the Zarkon weapons struck, the human defense systems didn't just absorb the attack. They studied it, understood it, and began to transform. Dr. Elena Chen's voice crackled through the communication network. Adaptive response protocol initiated. All systems are online. Orbital platforms that moments ago looked like standard defensive installations began to shift. Metallic surfaces rippled and reconfigured, creating complex geometric patterns that absorbed and redirected incoming energy. It was less like a military defense and more like a massive living organism responding to a threat. The Zarkon fleet hesitated. This was not the response they had encountered with hundreds of previous civilizations. Most species collapsed under the first wave of their attack, their technological defenses crumbling like sand against a tsunami. But humanity's response was something else entirely. Each nanite in the defensive swarm was a tiny piece of a greater intelligence. They communicated instantaneously, sharing information, adapting, learning. Where one was destroyed, others would immediately understand the method of attack and develop a counter-strategy. Energy redirection at 98% efficiency, reported a young technician, her eyes wide with a mixture of scientific excitement and controlled tension. The Zarkon weapons began to fail, not through direct confrontation, but through a process of continuous adaptation. Energy beams that should have destroyed entire sections of orbital infrastructure were absorbed, transformed, and redirected. Admiral Krell's projection flickered with what could only be described as confusion. This was not how first contact was supposed to proceed. The human response defied every strategic model in the Zarkon database. David Chen allowed himself the smallest of smiles. The real conversation was just beginning. Humanity wasn't just defending itself. It was demonstrating a fundamentally different approach to existence, a way of thinking that valued adaptation, creativity, and collective potential over rigid, hierarchical control. The first battle for Earth's future was being fought not with traditional weapons, but with imagination itself. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez leaned forward, his eyes reflecting the cascade of quantum data streaming across multiple holographic displays. The communication system they had developed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed, a hybrid of technological innovation and psychological strategy that defied traditional understanding of warfare. Adaptive linguistic matrix at full capacity, he muttered to Dr. Elena Chen, who was monitoring a secondary interface. The room buzzed with an electric tension, each researcher connected through neural interfaces that allowed for instantaneous communication and data sharing. The Zarkon believed they were engaging in a standard conquest. What they didn't realize was that every transmission, every energy signature, every moment of communication was being transformed into something entirely unexpected. The human response wasn't just a defense, it was a comprehensive reimagining of first contact. On a secondary display, linguistic algorithms began to decode the underlying structure of Zarkon communication. But this wasn't simple translation. The system was learning, adapting, creating new layers of meaning with each intercepted transmission. Where the aliens sent commands, humanity responded with complex philosophical challenges embedded within technological signals. Look at this, Elena pointed to a rapidly shifting pattern of quantum-encoded information. They're sending what they believe is a standardized surrender protocol. We're responding with a multi-layered communication that's part mathematical proof, part cultural exchange, and part intellectual challenge. The Zarkon communication networks began to experience unprecedented disruption. Their standardized control systems encountered something they had never seen before, a defense mechanism that was simultaneously technological, psychological, and almost artistic in its complexity. Aboard the lead Zarkon warship, communication specialists found their most advanced systems transforming. What should have been straightforward battle communications became elaborate puzzles. Technical readouts morphed into complex geometric patterns. Tactical displays started generating mathematical sequences that challenged the fundamental understanding of computational logic. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up a visualization of the ongoing communication exchange. It looked less like a military engagement and more like an intricate dance of information. Each human response was carefully constructed to do more than just defend. It was designed to challenge, to provoke intellectual curiosity, to demonstrate a fundamentally different approach to existence. We're not just defending, Marcus explained to the team. We're engaging in the most comprehensive first contact scenario in galactic history. Every transmission is an opportunity to demonstrate human potential. The neural interfaces allowed for a level of collaborative thinking that seemed almost supernatural. Researchers from different disciplines, quantum physicists, linguistic experts, cultural anthropologists, and AI specialists, worked as a single, breathing intelligence. Their collective mind was far more powerful than any individual could comprehend. Zarkon battle groups found themselves confronting an enemy that didn't fight like any species they had encountered before. Where they expected resistance, they found intellectual provocation. Their communication networks were being transformed into living, breathing systems of potential understanding. Psychological impact tracking at 92% effectiveness, announced a young researcher named Zara Okonkwo. The displays showed the progressive breakdown of Zarkon tactical thinking, replaced by a growing sense of confusion and intellectual challenge. This wasn't just a technological defense. It was a comprehensive demonstration of human potential, a way of thinking that valued adaptation, creativity, and collective intelligence over rigid, hierarchical control. The first true conversation between humanity and an alien civilization was happening in a language that had never existed before, a complex dialogue of technology, philosophy, and pure, unbridled imagination. And humanity was just getting started. The news traveled faster than light, carried by communication networks that spanned thousands of star systems. On remote research stations, in hidden colonies, and across countless worlds, species watched the unfolding conflict with a mixture of terror and unexpected hope. The Galactic Archives, a massive data repository maintained by the Consortium of Integrated Civilizations, began tracking the transmission in real time. Senior archival analyst Haxerin, a member of the crystalline luminary species, adjusted her multispectral perception filters with growing fascination. "This is unprecedented," she communicated to her research team, her thoughts translating across multiple sensory spectrums. The human response to the Zarkon invasion defied every known protocol of first contact and defensive strategy. On a small research outpost orbiting a neutron star, a group of xenosociologists gathered around their primary observation station. Dr. Callow, a senior researcher from the aquatic Miran civilization, watched the data streams with increasing excitement. "Do you see how they're responding?" Callow's communication tentacles traced the complex patterns of human technological adaptation. It's not just a defense. It's a comprehensive reimagining of interspecies communication. The conflict was becoming more than a simple military engagement. It was a live demonstration of a fundamentally different approach to technological and social interaction, where most species viewed conflict as a binary proposition of conquest or submission. Humans were creating something entirely new. Across the galaxy, subjugated civilizations began to pay attention. The Zarkon hegemony had ruled through a combination of technological superiority and psychological intimidation. They had conquered hundreds of species, reducing them to resource extraction colonies and subservient populations. But humanity was different. Communication networks began to light up with unauthorized transmissions. Species that had long been silent under Zarkon oppression started to share fragments of the human response. Each transmission was a spark of potential, a demonstration that resistance was possible. On the corporate research world of Nexus Prime, a consortium of independent researchers began analyzing the human communication strategies. What they discovered challenged everything they understood about technological and social development. "Look at the adaptive complexity," noted Dr. Arya, a renowned xenotechnological analyst. "Their defensive systems aren't just responding. They're learning, growing, transforming with each interaction." The human approach was fundamentally different from any known galactic civilization. Most species developed technologies that were static, hierarchical, and rigidly controlled. Humanity had created a technological ecosystem that was more like a living organism, adaptive, collaborative, constantly evolving. Smaller species began to see humanity not as another potential threat, but as a possible path to liberation. The very tactics the Zarkon had used to maintain their galactic dominance were being systematically dismantled by an approach that valued creativity over control. "They're not just defending," Xiren communicated to her colleagues in the Galactic Archives. "They're rewriting the entire understanding of interspecies engagement." Communication networks began to shift. Unauthorized data packets carried fragments of human transmissions, spreading like intellectual wildfire across star systems. Each transmission was a challenge, an invitation to imagine a different way of existing. The conflict was becoming something more than a simple military engagement. It was a live demonstration of human potential, a comprehensive challenge to the existing galactic order. And the galaxy was watching, holding its collective breath. Admiral Krell's neural network pulsed with increasing complexity as the human response continued to defy every known strategic model. The massive biological mechanical intelligence that controlled the Zarkon fleet had conquered hundreds of civilizations, reducing each to a predictable pattern of terror and submission. But humanity was different. Each transmission from Earth was a multi-layered puzzle that challenged the fundamental understanding of communication, technology, and consciousness. What should have been a straightforward conquest had transformed into an intellectual engagement that threatened the very core of Zarkon cognitive frameworks. The primary communication matrix aboard the lead Zarkon warship began to experience unprecedented disruption. Where once there was a clean, hierarchical flow of information, now there were complex branching pathways that seemed to generate meaning faster than they could be processed. Dr. Elena Chen watched from the Global Defense Nexus, her fingers dancing across a quantum interface that looked more like a living organism than a traditional control system. "We're not just defending," she explained to her team. "We're engaging in the most comprehensive first contact scenario in galactic history." The human response was a masterclass in adaptive communication. Each Zarkon transmission was immediately analyzed, decoded, and transformed. It wasn't about defeating the enemy. It was about challenging their entire conceptual understanding of conflict, communication, and potential. Aboard the Zarkon flagship, communication specialists found their most advanced systems transforming in ways they could not comprehend. Tactical displays began generating mathematical sequences that challenged the fundamental principles of their technological understanding. Battle readouts morphed into complex philosophical dialogues. Weapon targeting systems started producing intricate artistic representations of potential communication pathways. Psychological impact tracking at 87% effectiveness, reported a researcher, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and controlled tension. The neural interfaces used by the human defense team allowed for a level of collaborative thinking that seemed almost supernatural. Researchers from quantum physics, linguistic analysis, cultural anthropology, and artificial intelligence worked as a single breathing intelligence. Their collective mind was far more powerful than any individual could comprehend. Admiral Krell's primary cognitive network began to experience what could only be described as cognitive dissonance. The human response was not just a defense, it was a comprehensive challenge to the Zarkan understanding of intelligence, communication, and potential. Imagine warfare that was less about physical confrontation and more about intellectual engagement. Where the Zarkan expected resistance, they found intellectual provocation. Their communication networks were being transformed into living, breathing systems of potential understanding. The conflict was revealing something fundamental about humanity. This was not a species that could be easily conquered or controlled. They were adaptive, creative, constantly evolving. Each moment of engagement was an opportunity to demonstrate a fundamentally different approach to existence. Communication specialists aboard Zarkan vessels found themselves confronting transmissions that were part mathematical proof, part cultural exchange, and part philosophical challenge. The human defense was a comprehensive demonstration of potential, a way of thinking that valued adaptation, creativity, and collective intelligence over rigid hierarchical control. They're rewriting the entire understanding of interspecies engagement, communicated Siren, the senior archival analyst monitoring the conflict from the Galactic Archives. The first true conversation between humanity and an alien civilization was happening in a language that had never existed before. A complex dialogue of technology, philosophy, and pure unbridled imagination. And humanity was just getting started. The massive construct appeared at the edge of known space, like a dream made manifest. Its geometric complexity defied traditional understanding of engineering, a living network of energy and potential that seemed to breathe with an intelligence far beyond human comprehension. Captain Maria Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the horizon, her team carefully selected from the most innovative minds humanity could offer. Dr. Elena Chen monitored the quantum communication systems, while Dr. Marcus Rodriguez managed the adaptive response protocols. Each team member represented a different approach to human potential: scientists, linguists, philosophers, and technological innovators working as a single breathing intelligence. "Incoming transmission," announced the communication specialist, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. The construct was a testing ground. Countless civilizations had been evaluated here, most found wanting. But humanity approached the challenge with a uniqueness that set them apart from every species that had come before. The first challenge materialized as a complex mathematical puzzle that would have taken most species generations to comprehend. The human team didn't just solve it, they began to expand upon it, creating new layers of mathematical potential that the testing construct had not anticipated. "We're not just solving the problem," Elena explained to her team. "We're demonstrating our approach to problem solving." Each challenge was a multidimensional experience. What appeared to be a simple cognitive test would suddenly transform, revealing layers of complexity that required collaborative thinking, creative interpretation, and a fundamental reimagining of the problem itself. The construct seemed to pause, recalibrating its understanding of intelligence. The next challenge was psychological, a series of complex scenarios that tested not just technological capability, but emotional intelligence, collaborative potential, and the ability to find creative solutions that went beyond traditional linear thinking. Maria watched as her team approached each challenge not as a test to be passed, but as an opportunity for collective growth. Where other species might have seen obstacles, humans saw potential for understanding, for connection, for transformation. Quantum communication systems began to light up with unprecedented complexity. The human responses were not just solving the challenges, they were expanding the very framework of the test itself. Each solution was an invitation to a deeper level of understanding. "Look at how we're engaging," Marcus pointed out to the team. "We're not competing. We're collaborating, not just with each other, but with the testing system itself." The construct seemed to react with what could only be described as curiosity. Humanity was presenting something entirely new, a form of intelligence that was adaptive, creative, deeply collaborative, and fundamentally optimistic. Challenge after challenge came, each one more complex than the last. Mathematical problems that required collective thinking, psychological scenarios that tested empathy and creative problem-solving, technological challenges that demanded innovative approaches. And with each challenge, humanity demonstrated something profound. Intelligence was not about individual brilliance, but about collective potential. It was about the ability to adapt, to grow, to see potential where others saw limitations. The final challenge came not as a test, but as an invitation, a complex communication that seemed to ask, what makes a civilization truly advanced? The human team's response was a comprehensive demonstration of their approach to existence. It wasn't about conquest or individual achievement. It was about collaboration, creativity, and the endless potential of collective intelligence. As the final transmission completed, a sense of anticipation filled the bridge of the horizon. They had not just passed a test, they had redefined the very understanding of intelligence itself. The moment of transformation arrived not with a dramatic explosion, but with a subtle shift that rippled across the fabric of galactic civilization. Captain Maria Rodriguez watched from the bridge of the horizon as the massive construct at the edge of known space began to change. Communication streams that had been tightly controlled for millennia suddenly opened. The Zarkon fleet, which moments ago had been a unified force of conquest, began to fragment. Some ships powered down their weapons. Others initiated communication protocols that seemed almost hesitant, uncertain. Dr. Elena Chen monitored the quantum communication networks, her fingers tracing patterns of unprecedented complexity. "They're not surrendering," she said to her team. "They're recalibrating." The galactic construct, that massive testing ground that had evaluated countless civilizations, began to transmit a comprehensive assessment. But this was unlike any previous evaluation. It was an invitation, a recognition of something fundamentally different about humanity's approach to existence. Zyron, the senior archival analyst from the Galactic Archives, watched the transmission with growing excitement. The human demonstration was more than a successful first contact. It was a comprehensive reimagining of what intelligent life could be. Humanity has introduced a new paradigm, Zyron communicated to her colleagues, not through conquest, but through collaborative potential. The transformation affected more than just the Zarkon. Across thousands of star systems, subjugated civilizations began to see a different path forward. The rigid hierarchical structures that had controlled galactic society for millennia started to show signs of fundamental change. On the bridge of the horizon, Maria Rodriguez understood that this was about more than a single conflict. This was about demonstrating a fundamentally different approach to intelligence, to civilization, to potential. The Zarkon leadership found themselves confronting a comprehensive challenge to their entire understanding of existence. Where they had expected to find another species to conquer, they discovered a civilization that approached challenges with a unique combination of creativity, collaborative intelligence, and profound optimism. "We're offering them a choice," Dr. Marcus Rodriguez explained to the team. "Not submission, not conquest, but a different way of existing." Communication networks across the galaxy began to shift. The hierarchical, controlled systems that had maintained the existing order started to transform. Information began to flow more freely. Collaborative networks emerged where rigid control had once dominated. Some Zarkon citizens chose integration. They were fascinated by a model of civilization that valued individual potential, collaborative thinking, and continuous adaptation. Others remained skeptical, but the very nature of their society was changing. The galactic construct, that massive testing ground, began to transmit a comprehensive message. It wasn't just an evaluation, it was a recognition. Humanity had demonstrated something profound about the nature of intelligence and potential. Maria caught Elena's eye, a moment of shared understanding passing between them. This wasn't about defeating an enemy. It was about demonstrating a fundamentally different approach to existence. Across thousands of star systems, civilizations began to reimagine their potential. The rigid structures that had controlled galactic society for millennia started to show signs of fundamental change. Information flowed more freely. Collaborative networks emerged where rigid control had once dominated. The day humanity said no became something far more significant. It was a declaration of a new way of thinking about intelligence, about potential, about the very nature of civilization itself. As the horizon began its journey back to Earth, Maria understood that they had done more than defend their planet. They had opened a new chapter in galactic history, one defined by collaboration, creativity, and the endless potential of collective intelligence. The real journey was just beginning.